I had no idea it was not in the trailer.
NCTV also thought it was in the trailer because that's what the agenda
That's
is.
where they went.
All right.
Mm.
Sounds like we're ready to start. So good evening, everybody. This is the April 3rd meeting of the Nantucket Conservation Commission.
NCTV also thought it was in the trailer because that's what the agenda
That's where they went.
My name is Seth Engelborg, Chair of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. We're meeting in a hybrid fashion today with some members on Zoom and some physically present in the Nantucket Public Safety Facility room. The first thing we'll be doing is establishing a quorum of members. Members, when you hear your name, please respond in the affirmative. Tim Brain,
Here.
Mike Miserelli,
Here.
RJ Turcott,
Here.
Joe Plandowski,
Here.
John Schaefer,
Here.
Linda Williams.
Here.
Thank you. That's all of us. So the next thing we're going to be doing is going over the continuances on our agenda tonight. There are several. Under notices of intent, we have 76 Eel Point Road, SC 483884, continued till April 17th. We have Nantucket Islands Land Bank at Smooth Hummocks Way, SC 483893, continued to April 17th. We have Purcell at 32 Dukes Road, continued until May 8th. We have Sconser Beach Preservation Fund, 59 through 83 Baxter Road, SC 483759, continued till April 17th. We have the Summer House of Nantucket Realty Trust at 10 and 16 Ocean Avenue, SC 483824, continued till May 8th. We have West Assured LLC, 62 Onoma Way, SC 483869, continued until April 17th. That's it for notices of intent. And I don't believe we have any continuances in other sections. So we need a motion to accept the agenda from one of the members.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Linda. I need a second. Thank you, Mike, for the second. We do need to do roll call votes today. So when you hear your name, please respond. Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Miserelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously. Next up, we have public comment. This is for items not on tonight's agenda. We'll be using the select board's procedures for public comment. If you have a comment that is not related to any agenda items, we will recognize you whether you're on Zoom or in person. We will be limiting comments to 3 minutes or less. Comments will not have a response from the board, from the commission, but they will simply be taken under advisement for the future. So I'm going to first start by seeing if there's any comments physically present in the public safety facility room. RJ or Mike or John or Will, is there any?
No comments.
Okay, we have one online, Burton Balkind. Burton, I'll recognize you at this point. Please say your name for the record and make your comment.
My name is Burton Balkind. I'm commenting on myself, not as the president of the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy. And it was a question about the notice intent on letter C, number 1. I was wondering is there going to be an opportunity for public to comment on that? And if so, I will hold my comments.
That specific item has been continued. So your option to comment on that will be at the April 17th meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments on Zoom? Seeing not, we'll be moving on to our public hearing. We'll be starting our public hearing under notice of intent. As I understand it, we only have one notice of intent today that hasn't been continued. That's Segalini Properties LLC, 8 Bassett Road, SC 483851, represented by Mark Ritz. This is a waiver required project, so we'll be opening it up for Discussion? Mark, good evening.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, reminder that I'm recused.
As am I, Seth.
Yes, thank you for that reminder. And I just realized we do have one NOI after this, but thank you for that reminder. So Commissioners Mizzarelli and Turcott are recused. If you're recused, please remove yourself from table or turn off your video. And Mark, good evening.
Good evening, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicants at 8 Bassett Road. At the last meeting, we had presented a revised plan that had elevated the height of the structure and the pool. We had gotten the pool out of the 2-foot groundwater separation, but we still had the footings for the house foundation just above groundwater, but inside the 2-foot separation. We have submitted a revised plan that increases the grades further and takes the footings of the house completely outside of the 2-foot groundwater separation, so we no longer require a waiver. That's where we're at. I'll be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns.
Thank you, Mark. I'll go to questions or comments from commissioners. If you have any, please raise your hand. Yes, Linda, go ahead.
Let me get this straight. You originally came in to ask for a waiver from the 2-foot separation, which was arbitrarily, and I've been on my soapbox about that. Is that correct, Mark, through you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'll
Yes,
answer that.
please.
That's correct. And then they've revised their plan to no longer need that waiver.
But I want to know how, because I figure you're adding fill to raise the grade. Is that correct? Through you, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead, but that's correct.
Yes.
I would rather give them the waiver than add fill to a lot when the HDC is going to have a cow because they don't allow change in grade to do that. So for me, because of where the history of this thing is, I would rather give them the waiver than bring in fill to raise the whole lot. I am never in favor of that. So that's where I am at the moment.
Thank you, Linda, and I appreciate that. But at this point, the applicant is requesting to move forward with the plan that they've proposed, so it's not really up to us to decide. It was it was previously within our purview to grant them that waiver. I mean, I guess we could still have them revise it again, but they've decided that they're willing to move forward with this new plan, so they don't need the waiver anymore.
Not happy.
I understand. Other commissioners? Okay. If you're a member of the public wishing to make a comment or ask a question, you can do so now. Please raise your hand virtually or approach the microphones in the meeting room. I don't see any online. And I don't see any in the room, but if there is some in the room, someone let me know.
Nothing in the room as of now.
Okay. Will, do we have everything we need to close this application?
I believe we do. There was no NHESP, so we do have everything we need to close.
Thank you. Mark, would you like to close?
Please.
Okay, is there a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Tim for the second. By roll call vote, Tim Brand,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay, Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries with 4 in the affirmative, 1 abstain, and 2 recused. And that is enough people to have this be an affirmative vote to that motion. So we can move on.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. And the next one is Craig C. Carroll, Revocable Trust, 8 Ames Avenue, SC 4838, or SC 483908, also represented by Mark Ritz. Mark, you're up again.
Good evening, Mark Ritz from Site Design, representing the applicant at 8 Ames. This is a very small lot. right before you go over the bridge at the western end of the island. There's an existing house there. It is a one-bedroom house. There is an existing conventional septic system. It is a one-bedroom conventional septic system. We are requesting approval and a waiver to construct a one-bedroom IA drip system to replace the conventional system. We have moved it as far from the wetland as is possible on the lot, including requesting a variance from the Board of Health for a property line setback. We're doing the best available upgrade. We're not increasing the capacity, and that's pretty much the extent of it. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or address any concerns.
Thank you, Mark. Commissioners, questions or comments? Seeing not. Members of the public, any questions or comments? Seeing not, Will, do we have everything that we need to close this application?
I believe this one did have a NHESP requirement. Am I incorrect in that, Mark?
I believe it is partially within Habitat. We sent it to Heritage, but Heritage, if I'm remembering correctly, Heritage, we're placing the septic system within an altered and landscaped portion of the property that's in Habitat, and it's a temporary subsurface disturbance. I believe that Heritage has an exemption for those, but we sent it to them anyway so that they can have a look at it.
Yeah, they do have an exemption for that, but if you sent it to them and they haven't responded, we probably should wait for the response just to be sure.
That is
would be my
what I was
recommendation
going
at
to
this
say
point.
through you. Sorry.
We're happy to wait out another meeting for that. I believe I don't remember the date we sent it to them. I think we're still within their window though.
Okay, so that being said, would you like to continue to April 17th?
Sure.
This will continue to April 17th. Thank you. And now we'll move on to amended orders of conditions. We're going to start with an application for 36 Tennessee LLC at 36 Tennessee Avenue, SE 48 3807, which is a waiver required application. And so we'll be opening this up individually. That application is represented by Paul Santos. Paul, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for the record. On behalf of the applicant, 36 Tennessee LLC, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors. This is a request for an amended order of conditions for the applicant at 36 Tennessee LLC. This commission previously had issued an order of conditions on September 30th of 2024 for the upgrade of an existing septic system and construction of a garage within a bordering vegetated wetland, isolated vegetated wetland, land subject to coastal storm flowage, and a policy coastal bank and their associated buffer zones. This application for the amendment was filed back in December of 2024, but we had held and asked for continuances until this evening as we were tracking the proposed construction of a new dwelling on the property through the HDC with the board's policy on the simultaneously tracking the projects, whereas this had spent some time at the HDC. We felt appropriate to be comfortable with what the HDC was going to approve before we came before the commission, and that's why we're before you tonight. I believe this is back on the agenda for the HDC for the dwelling, the construction of the dwelling on this coming Tuesday. And I believe the expectation is that with a few minor changes that had been made prior to the Tuesday meeting, that the approval may be sought for this. Footprint changes, elevation changes along that line were things that were the focus of the HDC review. Within this request, the applicant is seeking permission to relocate a portion and demolish the remainder of the existing dwelling on the property, thereby constructing a new dwelling essentially within the same footprint that is currently located on the site. 36 Tennessee is a property located in Nantucket. It's a bit of a unique property in that it's under single ownership, but it is divided by Oklahoma Avenue, which is an unconstructed paper road. So the plan that you see before you, you see a rectangular lot on Tennessee Avenue depicted as lots 49 and 50. And then you see to the north a rectangular or slender lot depicted as lots 98 and 98A, which front on the paper road known as Oklahoma Avenue, and also front on Hither Creek. The resource areas on the plan that you see before you are a bordering vegetated wetland associated with the creek. There is a policy coastal bank, which is essentially a non-sediment source coastal bank that's related to the policy, DEP policy with regard to the interaction of the slope of the land and the particular flood zone. You also have a bordering vegetated wetland to the west of the property located on the abutting property, and you have a small isolated wetland located within the property at the front portion to the right of the existing driveway. Right now, you enter the property from Tennessee Avenue to the driveway on the westerly portion of the property. Driveway is essentially located within the limits of Oklahoma Avenue, and you have the dwelling located to the north of Oklahoma Avenue, between Oklahoma Avenue and Hither Creek.
Hold on, Paul. Are you aware, Will, that we can't see it on the screen, those of us at home? It's not being shared?
I am now. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Linda.
thank you.
Paul's doing his thing, but I'm not looking at it.
Yeah, it's
My
in the
apologies.
packet, but if you get it up on the screen, that'd be great.
I just didn't want to leave here and go to the packet. There we
Should
go.
be good now.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Where did I leave off, Linda? So within this request, the amended order itself, the applicant is seeking permission to relocate a portion and demolish the remainder of the existing dwelling, construct a new dwelling. A portion of the existing dwelling will be resourced to the front portion of the Tennessee lot, if you will, and used, repurposed as an existing garage, The septic system would be modified, or has been modified slightly to accommodate that move of the interior of the existing dwelling. We have just simply moved the tanks. We did have a garage located on the original order of conditions that was issued when we did the septic system upgrade. However, this repurposed garage would be in a different location, and it's a different size, as we would be utilizing a portion of the existing structure by moving it to the south. The application itself would require waivers, as we are working basically within the footprint of the existing dwelling. We did submit a waiver request, and I'll read from the body of that. So on behalf of the applicant, Nantucket Surveyors is requesting two waivers from the Nantucket Wetland Protection Regulations, Section 39010B5 and 39018B1 for the above referenced project. Specifically, waivers for the proposed partial demolition of the existing dwelling and construction of a new dwelling within the 50-foot no-build setback to a bordering vegetated wetland and the 25-foot no disturb and 50-foot no-build setback to a policy coastal bank. The existing dwelling was constructed in 1975 and predates the current Town of Nantucket Conservation Commission wetland protection regulations adopted in 1988. The applicant wishes to apply for these waivers upon the premise that the proposed project will provide a long-term net benefit, provide improvement to the resource area, provided any adverse effects are minimized by careful consideration conditions, section 390, 3F, 3C. I do have a handout, and I know we have a limited board here, but with the chair's permission, if I could potentially hand that out to the sitting commissioners, would that be appropriate? And it's simply what it does is, the plan that you see before you, you can clearly see where the proposed dwelling is, but the handout, in the existing dwelling is shown on that drawing, but I've highlighted it on an exhibit to try to give a better sense of where the building is now and what the building would be under this existing proposal.
Yes, Paul, I'll permit that, but just make sure that you also send a digital copy to Will for the rest of the commissioners to review.
So what I just provided was the plan that you see on the board, but I've highlighted in yellow where the existing structure is. And you'll see from that existing structure, the existing dwelling sits on a small plateau which exists on this site. It actually sits outside of the flood zone. The flood zone wraps around that existing dwelling. And in fact, the location of where the proposed repurposed garage would be is also located outside of the existing flood zone. So within that yellow box where the existing dwelling is, you'll see we're moving or constructing the new structure and moving it slightly forward. And when this is actually completed, it says the proposed dwelling will have approximately 250 square feet less ground cover within the 25-foot policy coastal bank buffer zone and approximately 100 square foot less ground cover within the 50-foot bordering vegetated wetland buffer zone. The Board of Health and Conservation Commission had previously approved an upgrade of the existing sewage disposal system to increase the groundwater separation and incorporate an innovative alternative nitrogen-reducing technology for the property. The dwelling itself would still be serviced by the septic system located on the front lot on Oklahoma Avenue. Historically, there was a variance granted from the Board of Health to cross the paper road with the building sewer line. That way, it gave us the ability to construct the septic system as far away from the creek as we could, and located on the front portion adjacent to Tennessee Avenue. The application itself lists forth the complete waiver request and application. And by way just of information, if you look at the plan that you see before you, the property to the west, which is owned by, shown is owned by now formerly Jesse P. Harvey. There exists 2 sheds on that particular property. There is no structure, there is no dwelling on that property, nor has there ever been. And in fact, there is a walking path or a right-of-way over the property that you're reviewing tonight to gain access to that property. Subsequent to this application's filing, the owner of 36 Tennessee, in fact, as of Monday, purchased that property from the Jesse P. Harvey trustee. So we now also control, or the applicant controls, the property to the west, albeit the wetland line on that property and the 50-foot no build is pretty much renders that property unusable with regard to this application. It does at least open up the property that this dwelling is located on to be kind of contiguous and have a little bit more land to the west. At this point, we're not proposing any work within that area. Those two sheds have been there historically for some time. There's a small meadow area or moat area that exists on that property. If you look at the site photos within the application, we do have pictures of the existing dwelling. As I said, it sits on a essentially unmanicured lawn area, if you will. It's a basic lawn area. The first photo that you see there is a view from the creek looking towards the back of the property. The limit of vegetation would not be changed under this application. There is no proposed change in the grading. Again, what's now disturbed along the back portion of the creek side of the property would not change, as the front portion would not change. The second picture you're looking at there, where the front door, you have the two windows, that's the actual center core of the house that would be repurposed as a garage, moving to the Tennessee, to the front lot. There's also another view from the creek and a view of the backyard looking at the existing area. The limit of clearing for the property has been depicted on the existing plan. And again, there's no plan or need to expand that out. The building itself is being essentially built in the same area or footprint of the building, and it's within that existing developed area. There is also in the packet the HDC plans, which has the south elevation, the north elevation, and the east and west elevations for the subject property. The one issue with regard to the back of the property, or there's the north elevation, if we could rotate those. So the front elevation is pretty straightforward. The back elevation, you'll notice, and if I go to the other two elevations, there is a cantilevered component. If you can see on the top elevation there, there is a cantilevered component of a second floor deck for the second floor on that particular portion of the property. We did have in your packet, there is a letter, or there was a letter originally filed from Bruce Mandel on behalf of the Nantucket Advisory Board. There were, and I know the site is somewhat confusing. There's a number of offset lines, there's setback lines and so forth. Bruce had raised some issues with regard to the number of variances. And I'll briefly just go through some of it says the variance requests relate to relief from distance to a bordering vegetated wetland. I did address that with regard to the disturbance occurs within the approximate location of the existing dwelling footprint. Regulations pertaining to the policy coastal bank, same comment as the previous. Disturbance occurs within the approximate location of the existing dwelling footprint. Policy coastal setback requirements. Again, we talked about the 250 square foot less ground cover than the existing within the 25-foot policy coastal bank. 100-foot buffer. There is no waiver necessary. As you know, the 100-foot buffer is just the area in which requires us to come before you. He talks about the 300-foot setback set forth in the town of Regulation 332. That's the Board of Health regulation that requires the septic system to be set back 300 feet from the creek, which we have met. Again, talking about some of the issues with the footprint. And then he specifically talks about some of the issues of why why do we have to rebuild in the same spot, and why can't we move and build on the front lot? The front lot has some restrictions, obviously, just like the back does. We've got a 50-foot no build, a 25-foot no disturb. That's where the septic system is, meeting setbacks to the septic system, the setbacks to the no build area, and in fact, now putting the building potentially within the flood zone. There are restrictions with regard to the space available to move the structure to the front lot, to the front of the property. There is also some confusion when one looks at the assessor's map for this property, as the town's assessor's map is actually incorrectly drawn, and they show the front portion being owned partially by Patience Killen, which she owns the property to the west. So when you look at the assessor's map, it's a bit confusing too to determine where this property actually is located. But the site plan that you have before you does accurately depict the location of the property. That's the extent of the application. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have. I guess we can go from there. Again, this is an amended order of conditions to essentially replace a 1970, circa 75, 76 structure that was constructed on this property and was actually held in common ownership by the same family up until the current owner purchased this property back in the fall of 2024. And I'm happy to answer any questions that the board or commissioners may have.
Thank you, Paul. Questions or comments from commissioners? John, go ahead.
Hey, Paul. That footprint seems from the picture a lot bigger than the old one. Is that correct, or is it close to the same?
No, unfortunately, John, there's no way I can show you that photo, I don't think. I think if the commissioners, that you get a good sense of what the yellow is on there. It does look different, but by the time, there's such an awkward size to that existing structure that's there, and now it's being squared up. Is there any way you can share that, Will, on the screen to come, for the camera to come to me? Yeah. And I defer to the commissioners that are looking at the change in it. You can kind of get a sense of. The building is somewhat sprawling, John. If you look at it the way it is, it's basically being compacted and pulled into a rectangular. So.
Okay, thank you.
Other commissioners? Okay, do we have any questions or comments from members of the public? Seeing not, Will, do we have everything we need to close the hearing for this amended order of conditions?
Yes, we do, Seth.
Paul, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Mr. Chairman.
Take
Second.
Mike for the motion and Linda for the second. By roll call vote, Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Miserelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engleberg, aye. That carries unanimously. So this matter is closed. And as a reminder, we updated the procedures, so we'll actually be issuing this AOOC in the section where we do orders of conditions. So stay tuned for that. But we'll move on to, thank you as well. We'll move on to the next amended orders of conditions request, which is 2 Easton Street LLC at 2 and 6 Easton Street, SE 48 3613, represented by Art Gasparo. Art, good evening.
I
good
have to
evening.
recuse from this one, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, this is, has Commissioner Williams recused. Anyone else? Okay, Art, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before the commission tonight, requesting an amended order of conditions for the project, which was permitted to replace an existing timber bulkhead and the pile supported pier at the property right out next to the Brant Point Light. There was a small section at the end of the existing bulkhead that was not replaced. I think that I'm not exactly sure what happened, but it wasn't shown on the plan. And there is in fact that bulkhead exists. And so when they did the replacement, the work has been done for the pier and the bulkhead with the timber cap. But the work was limited to what had been approved. And there's essentially a 37-foot section from the end of where they stopped the work to the property line. And it was inadvertent, I believe, that that hadn't been included with the original application. And it was all part of the same bulkhead. So we're seeking permission to also amend the order to extend the 37 feet, take out the put the bulkhead in front of that existing timber bulkhead and then match the timber cap for the rest of the project. And again, I don't believe there'd be any adverse impact. There's a structure that's there right now.
Thank you, Art. The part that was done, is that FRP too, or was that timber?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
The part that was actually replaced, not the part that was inadvertently not replaced, but is that an FRP sheet bulkhead, or is that a timber bulkhead in the part that was replaced?
No, it's FRP with a timber cap.
Okay, so it's going to be the same on both
Yeah,
sides.
everything's the same. We're not making any changes. It's going to match the same, height of what was approved before. It's just an amendment to cover the piece that hadn't been permitted that should have been, that I think the intention was to have done originally.
Okay, questions or comments from commissioners? Seeing none, questions or comments from members of the public? I see none. So, Will, do we have everything we need to close this application?
Yes, we do, Seth.
Is there a motion to close?
Motion to close.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. By roll call vote, Tim Brand,
Aye.
Mike Miserelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries 6 in the affirmative with Commissioner Williams recused. Thank you, Art.
Thank you.
And we'll now move on to our public meeting. We'll be starting with orders of conditions. Will, I don't know if you sent these out, but can you get them up on the screen? And let's see, I think the first one we're doing is 8 Bassett Road. If you're recused from this one, please exit the table. So do you want to give us a quick overview?
I was muted, Seth. Sorry, it's been a while since we're in this room.
No worries.
The order permits the proposed removal of an existing dwelling, construction of a new dwelling, pool, shed, driveway improvements. It's at 8 Bassett Road. buffer zone to a BVW. I do have to fix a date on the plan of record just to catch the revision before
Yeah.
we.
And a waiver
Move
is no
on.
longer required based on the updates to the plan. So we can delete that.
And then I just have to grab that date real quick and delete the waiver. Then we have our pool lighting 1819. I am guessing we'd like to add the native species and ag chemicals, which I will.
Yes, please. Anything else the commission wishes to add or make comment on? Okay, we'll get those two conditions in there, and then when we're ready, we'll take a motion to approve an issue as amended.
All right.
Okay, is there a motion to approve and issue the order of conditions as amended?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, John, for the motion and Linda for the second. By roll call vote, Tim Brain,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries 5 in the affirmative with Commissioners Turcott and Miserelli recused. Thank you. So we'll move on now to our next order, which is gonna be in the amended orders of conditions.
36 Tennessee.
36 Tennessee. Get that up on the screen.
Yeah, I said it and then I just kind of waited for it to show up. Wouldn't that be nice? Can AI do that? Hey Siri, bring up my files. All right. 36 Tennessee, this was our amended order. So we have the date of amendment, our amended plan of record. Then in bold, amendments are always in bold. This order has been amended to remove the proposed garage, relocate a portion of the existing dwelling, and modify the proposed location of the septic tank and pump chambers. We had conditions 18 and 19 here. There's a waiver update.
Shouldn't that also say build a new house?
Yeah, where did it, so I may have read that wrong.
This is complicated, this one.
Yeah, it's relocate a portion of the existing dwelling, construct a new dwelling.
Yeah, that's got to be in there somewhere.
Woo! Missed it, yeah. I thought that was in that sentence somewhere. Thank you.
No, just
All right,
before and modify, just put construct a new dwelling.
There we
A
go.
lot of moving parts, you know? All right. So other than the, so let me just see what this is. This is fine. The update to the waiver, the amendment to this order requires waivers under 390-10B5 and 390-18B1 for demolition of existing structures, placement of elements within the 50 and 25 of a policy bank. The commission finds that the project as proposed results in a net benefit to the resource area and therefore grants a waiver under 393F3C of the Nantucket Wetland Protection Regulations.
Okay, commissioners, any additions for conditions? Think we should add lighting? 'Cause it's
Lighting, yeah, we should
residential
probably put that in there.
construction. Think we should add fertilizers and
Landscaping,
chemicals and landscaping because it's residential construction.
Right.
All our usual stuff for Nantucket. There's a bunch of stuff for Nantucket.
Yeah, I think anything for residential construction should have these basic conditions in it.
Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 from out there.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, so we have lighting, plantings with our native species cultivars and no fert or ag chemicals. And is there anything else conditions wise?
If not, is there a motion to issue or approve the order and is it as amended and issue?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second,
Thank you, John. By roll call vote, Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Roger Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Planowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries unanimously. And then we'll take the amended order for 2 and 6 Easton Street with Linda recused.
Yep.
And we'll get that up when you're able to.
All right, 2 and 6 Easton Street. We have date amended, our amended plan, permit overview. So the order has been amended to reflect the full extent of timber bulkhead, and I should probably write to be repaired in here or something, because this makes it sound like it's just to show that it exists. Any comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been amended to show the full extent and allow the replacement with the FRP bulkhead with a timber cap. to permit its replacement
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a
with
way
a timber capped FRP sheet bulkhead.
I was trying to smith some magical thing in my head where I could just be like, in the same fashion as previously described. Yeah, in kind. I'm gonna say to permit its replacement. No, because in kind would just be timber, what it is. All right, don't get lost in the weeds here, Will. The order has been amended to reflect the full extent of existing timber bulkhead and to permit its replacement with timber capped FRP sheet bulkhead. We are not supposed to do that. Fiber, reinforced polymer. I forget where, but at some point I was told that acronyms are frowned upon in permits. And then the waiver should be the exact same. This is the same work as proposed. And that should be it.
Okay. Commissioners, any thoughts, questions, comments, additions? If not, is there a motion to approve the amended order of conditions as amended and issue it?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim, for the second. By roll call vote, Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plendowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries 6 in the affirmative with Commissioner Williams recused. And we'll move on to, we don't have any RDAs tonight. We'll move on to minor modifications. We have one, Turk Family LLC at 15 Marsh Hawk Lane, SE 483766, represented by Paul Santos. Paul, you're welcome to go again.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Paul Santos with Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the property owner and applicant Turk Family LLC. This is a minor modification request for the relocation of a shed and pool equipment on the subject property at 15 Marsh Hawk Lane. The applicant previously sought approval from this commission for the placement of the pool. There was a shed depicted on that plan. However, we did not, at the time, HDC was concerned with its location and it was not approved. So the commission approved the notice of intent, but excluded the shed due to the fact that we had not received an HDC approval. That has been obtained. The shed has been moved slightly. You see the shed that was located on the original plan. It's 10 by 12 shown. It's been slid to the west, and pool equipment has gone with it. It's both is depicted in red. So it's a minor modification to approve the location of the shed and the adjusted pool equipment location.
Thank you,
All
Paul.
occurring outside of the 50-foot setback.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for commissioners? Seeing none, is there a motion to issue the minor modification
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
or approve an issue, I should say? Thank you, Linda. We need a second.
Second.
Thank you, Tim, by roll call vote. Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plendowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to certificates of compliance. We have one today as well. And that is Nantucket Theater Project LLC, 5 North Water Street, SE 482736, represented by Paul Santos. Paul, go ahead.
Okay, again, thank you. Paul Santos from Nantucket Surveyors on behalf of the applicant Nantucket Theater Project LLC. This is an order of conditions that was issued for the construction of the White Heron Theater. This actually goes back some time. The order apparently, the COC had not been obtained. So we've requested the COC for the construction of the theater. The original order of conditions was issued back in January of 2015. The theater was actually completed around 2017, and there is an as-built plot plan that's been submitted with the request. I also submitted with the request the FEMA flood elevation certificate that was prepared at the same time for the project, as this was a commercial project located within the flood zone. It was a flood zone, land subject to coastal storm flowage filing only. I actually did a site walk this past week, and believe it or not, there's been no change to the site since the 2017 as-built. So everything as it was in 2017 is how it exists today. The plan was done in accordance with the order, and we are seeking a certificate of compliance from the commission.
Thank you, Paul. Will, have you been out to the site and do you have a recommendation for us?
Yes, I have been there. I just want to double check on my copy if I had continuing conditions. I don't believe there were.
Yeah, there's no ongoing conditions because there
Yeah.
wasn't any conditions on the permit.
Oh, yeah. Solid point. So my recommendation is that we issue the COC, and I can confirm what Paul said, that everything is the same as on that 2017 plan, which is good behavior on the property owner's part. Let's be.
Thank you. Is there a motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
So moved,
So
Mr.
moved.
Chairman.
Thank you, Linda. I'll take Mike for the second by roll call vote. Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Miserelli,
Aye.
Richard Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plendowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Ingeborg, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
And now we'll move on. In the agenda, we have no extension requests tonight, so we'll move to other business. The first item to do is approval of minutes. We have minutes from September 5th, November 14th, November 21st, December 4th, December 5th, and December 19th of 2024. Commissioners, have you had a chance to review those minutes?
Chair
And-
Engelborg.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I have, but I'd just like to abstain from the September 5th ones because I wasn't here.
Okay, that's fine. I'll note too on the September 5th minutes. Commissioner Golding got a shout out as still being on this commission, still being the chair of this commission. That is unfortunately not true. That was me.
Really?
So sorry, Ian, but we're gonna have to remove your name for that.
Seth, which one? I'm sorry.
It's September 5th.
September 5th. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll remove the ghost of Ian Past on that one. But otherwise, I think that's a minor change. And so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna vote on the September 5th separately. So RJ can abstain. So is there a motion to approve the minutes from September 5th, 2024?
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you, Mike
Second.
and Linda for the second. By roll call vote, Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Miserelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Abstain.
Joe Plendowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Ingeborg, aye. That carries 6 in the affirmative with Commissioner Turcott abstained. And then we'll take a motion to approve the 11-14, 11-21, 12-4, 12-5, and 12-19, 2024 minutes collectively as a block. Is there a motion to that effect?
Motion to approve all the others.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Mike, for the second. By roll call vote, Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Miserelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plendowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Ingeborg, aye. Those carry unanimously. We'll move on to monitoring reports, which I don't believe we have any today. So we'll move on to committee reports. Crack, Tim, do you have a report for us?
No, nothing new. Thank you.
CPC,
I
John,
love these short
anything?
reports.
Nothing,
John,
nothing
anything?
new.
Okay, Mike, anything from NPDC?
Yes, just briefly, we met on the 24th of March. Mostly went over transportation planning reports and a heavy focus on the upcoming Tom Nevers bike path, which was quite interesting if anybody wants to go back in the packet and look at it.
Thank you, Mike. Linda, anything from the harbor plan?
Slogging through,
Thank you.
making headway though.
All right, any commissioners' comments tonight? Okay, seeing not, we'll move on to enforcement actions. We have one listed, which is 14 Plover Lane. Before we get to that, Will, do we have anything else to discuss?
Nothing new
Okay,
yet.
in that case, we will move on to the enforcement action against 14 Plover Lane. As a general update, all of the commissioners, as well as representatives from the violator, did accomplish a site visit on Tuesday, April 1st. It was not a joke, it actually happened. And we were able to get a sense of additional sense, since there had been a previous field viewing, but additional sense of what happened on that site, and see it again. Will, do you have any updates for us at this point?
I, of course, just received a handful of almonds from Commissioner Turcott, but I do not have more of an update than what we all saw yesterday. Well, actually, I do have a mild update. I've requested legal counsel to be present for any discussion of the finding structure. I would definitely like them to be here to discuss the opinion that was circulated. I don't feel comfortable being the person to make either argument. So I know I spoke with Seth this morning. Their first availability will be our first regular meeting in May, which is May 8th. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have discussion on 14 Plover tonight. I would just like to hold off on finalizing any finding or whatnot until we can have actual discussion with our counsel and
Well,
see
the
if we can come to
opinion
a
was,
conclusion.
oh, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Will. And the opinion that's posted is in the packet is a legal memo from them. I think I agree that we should wait until their representative can be physically present to discuss any potential fines, but I don't think that precludes us from doing the other work that we need to here, since this process is going to be ongoing anyways. So I think we can discuss the restoration plan, the process of proceeding with notice of intent, and the active, moving forward with this process, and we can discuss the finding structure later, since tonight's not the last hearing anyway. Yes, John, go ahead.
But I mean, I thought the conclusion was pretty clear that the fines weren't going to be applicable in this case because the applicant is, is making an effort to do the, remediation and has proposed a plan, and so that they probably wouldn't be appropriate in this case.
Yeah, thank you, John, and I appreciate that. It's just better to have them here to make sure that we're reading their letter correctly and we're not misinterpreting it.
Okay.
So, with that being said, what we're going to do is we're going to request an update from the representatives of the violator on behalf of them proceeding with their restoration plan and moving forward with that process. So, Brian Madden, would you like to start?
Yes. Thank you very much. For the record, Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants, representing the applicant. So last Friday, we had submitted some updates to the restoration plan materials. Would you like me to share those?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay, thank you. Great. Everyone see that?
Yep.
All right, great. So the few additions were made, one of which was incorporated on both the restoration plan and the restoration planting plan, and also the narrative, but was clarifying access points. And we reviewed this out in the field on Tuesday, but just to reiterate, so what we've included, uh, basically a 6 foot wide access corridor off of Wawinnet Road. There's already a pre-existing little path right there right now, but it basically weaves in between some taller vegetation, and it would be the primary access delivery point for planting of buffer zone planting area 1 here in blue, and wetland planting area W2, and W1, wetland planting area 1. Obviously, we have this pinch point in the middle. I'll just zoom in a second. Give me a minute to load. So on site, there's a small little connection, not wide enough for transporting plant materials, so accesses could be divided. Again, these 3 planting areas via Wawinnet Road, and then once the plantings are installed, this temporary access path will be replanted. We submitted a updated planting plan that excuse me, these have a bunch of the little tags on them. But the uh, replanted it in this area with a cluster of shrubs right off of Wawinnet Road, and then 3 tupelo trees, and then another cluster of shrubs at the terminus. The moving back out to the wider plan, um, buffer zone planting area B2, and um, B3, which is on the neighbor's property. And just to acknowledge here that we're still in dialogue with the abutters. We don't have consent to plant on their property or any of the details thereof. We're still working that out. But the access would be proposed from Plover Lane through 14 on the north side of the house. I think we saw there's an outdoor shower right here, and then a little board fence, which would likely need to be removed, but the access point would be to plant this area, and not have connection back and forth for plant delivery through this narrow neck. The only thing that would go through is the temporary irrigation to water the planting areas on the west side of the property. We had also, at the neighbor's request, updated some of the planting specifications. We increased some of the plant sizes, added a couple saplings within B3, and also the W1. We added a total of 8 shrubs to address some of the minor encroachment onto the neighboring parcel number 12 in a few locations. I'll just highlight those. We had a cluster of 3 right here, just south of planting area B1. And then a total of 4 over here, or sorry, 5, just on the other side of the existing deer fence that again is supposed to be removed. And just while I know, and we didn't review this at the on-site, but just for clarification, I think there was a question or comment made at the last meeting. So the intent of the stippling for the ground cover plugs is not necessarily representative of this is the grid pattern of where the plants are going. It was just to demarcate the area will be infilled in and around the proposed shrubs and saplings within the specific area. That was just a clarifying point I just wanted to make. But I think we all saw the property on Tuesday and kind of reviewed those access points and updated details. Again, we're still in dialogue with the neighbors to address their comments and questions. And again, we're looking to move forward with the planting as at least on site as quickly as possible, and hopefully can come out of this meeting with an approval of the restoration plan. There are still, long-term monitoring components and invasive species management aspects that can be fleshed out through the notice of intent and pending order of conditions. But that reviews the updates, and I think Glenn had wanted to make a few comments as well.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. And Glenn, before I recognize you, commissioners, do you have any questions or comments directed to Brian?
Oh yeah.
Yep, John, go ahead.
Yeah, we briefly asked about this, but if something doesn't make it, there's going to be an ongoing replacement kind of plan. Is that right?
Yeah, certainly. We are implementing some replacement procedures. If there is dieback noted, we'll need to replace any plants through the monitoring program. That will need to be documented to the commission to achieve whatever success rate, survivability rate the commission imposes upon the restoration aspect. But certainly, yes, there would be a need for ongoing management. Again, we have encroaching invasive species, but also nuisance vines, foxgrape, a lot of greenbrier out there that will need to be hand managed as feasible. And also, competing against deer browsing, and we are proposing to implement some deer management, but that is a battle.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Seth, Mike.
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
My question is, going forward, if we were to approve the restoration plan today and we monitor it, do we have any record, like, basically what I'm trying to say is if we approve this plan and decide that the plantings are maybe not adequate enough, do we have any recourse to request more plantings to satisfy the restoration?
As long as the enforcement action stays open, we have sufficient recourse, but we're also going to require a notice of intent to be filed, which is going to give us even more ability to require monitoring and replanting if necessary. So I think we'll be covered on both aspects then, or
Okay.
by doing that.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I just when I look at the plant list, it's just I'm uneasy about if we have enough plants, and I'm not saying we don't, but just want to make sure we can weigh in from time to time.
Thank you. Linda?
Particularly along the roadside, I would think, and along the buffer zones between the neighbors that got cut. I think we need to beef that up. And I was going to ask the same question that Mike just asked. And when is the NOI coming in?
We haven't made a definitive decision on that.
All right, so I think that's my next question. It shouldn't be like a year from now.
Yeah, I mean, I think once we accept the restoration plan, we should probably require the submission within 30 to 60 days, which is, I would say, a standard thing, but and should be easy to meet since they have already basically have the plan and the planting plan and most of the narrative. It probably could be done in a few hours max, honestly, but we'll give them a reasonable amount of time.
Okay.
Any other commissioners? Okay, Mr. Wood, I'll recognize you at this moment.
Good evening. Glenwood, Rubin and Rubin for the property owner. I concur with you, Seth, that the notice of intent surely can come in quickly, expeditiously, so it wouldn't be something that would be delayed. Um, Secondly, we submitted a letter. I'm not going to speak to fines or even touch it this evening. We appreciate that it makes sense to have town council attend. Thirdly, uh, totally concur with the statements made by Brian that we continue to work with Attorney Bailey and Oxbow to get their comments. I think we're getting close, obviously in terms of the plantings themselves, but also just the timing and access and that kind of stuff. If we can work it out, great. I don't think that it's done. It's a done deal this evening. And I'm not speaking for Mr. Bailey, but I think he surely concurs. So I would think that moving ahead to get an approval this evening so that we can move ahead with the restoration work on our client's property this evening and get it moving would be our surely request to the commission. Second to last point, comment made at the previous hearing and also in a submittal today by Attorney Bailey that the commission should revoke the outstanding order of conditions and use that as some kind of leverage to have the pool removed. Again, per my comment last time, I view that as really extraordinary and borderline silly. The commission should focus on what's been done, out here, and that's what we're focused on, and that's what we should stay focused on. Lastly, the comment again about an idea of a conservation restriction out here, I think is ill-placed. The area involved is very small. The idea of placing a CR in such a small amount of land really, in my experience, makes no sense. I know surely the trustees are up my way. The Essex County Greenbelt wouldn't go near something that was so tiny. Obviously, because of the BVW as well as the no build zones, your subzones, none of that front area with frontage on Wawinick can ever be developed. I will say that our client is willing to put a deed restriction on that front side of the property. And apparently that would be consistent with the abutting property Forever Wild, which has a deed restriction, but not a CR. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. Commissioners, any questions or comments related to either of those two speakers or anything else that might be coming up from the site visit or any other thoughts?
Chair.
Yes, RJ, go ahead.
So thank you. I still think there's merit to a conservation restriction. There are quite a few that are that small on Nantucket, and it'd make it much easier to keep a record of what's going on that property, because that's what we're struggling with here with the restoration plan and these site visits is we don't exactly know precisely what was lost, and we would have a record of that and have it inspected annually if it was a conservation restriction. So I still think it's worth investigating. Thank you.
Thank you, RJ. And, we have the authority to require that, whether the applicant wants it or not. So we can talk about that within the notice of intent. But I think the idea of a deed restriction is a possibility as well. Any other commissioners at this point? Okay, so I have a few observations from the site visit. The first is that in reviewing the lighting that was placed on the dwelling, it's my assessment that 100% of the lighting that was installed is non-compliant with the Chapter 102, the Town of Nantucket Outdoor Lighting Bylaw. So we would certainly request that all of those fixtures are updated to meet that bylaw. If we're not requesting it, the lighting enforcement officer is going to request it anyways. I think it's probably a lot easier to update lighting than it is to do this large scale plant restoration. So we appreciate you doing that. The the second point is that, I mean, it's clear from the plan, the restoration plan and the information submitted by the applicant, the violator, but even more so on the site visit, it's clear that the extent of cutting did go on to the neighboring properties, both 12 and 16. And in some areas, it's my assessment that it might have gone farther than the survey is looking at. So, maybe that's just my personal opinion, but I could see, especially on the 12 Plover property, some vines and greenbrier mostly that was cut, I think, far beyond what's on the plan. Is it really going to make a difference if that quick growing vine is just going to grow back anyways? Maybe, maybe not, but I think we do need to have clarity about exactly where the cutting went. My third point is that there are several invasive species on site that I noticed. March and early April is a fun time on Nantucket because the only thing that's green is invasive species. So I noticed garlic mustard, bittersweet, and honeysuckle. And I think that there's obviously information in the restoration plan about invasive species, but I think when we actually get the notice of intent, we're going to need a much more specific invasive treatment protocol, with more details about who's doing the application and what the actual chemicals are and what the schedule and what the follow-up is, which I think is something that is not too hard to get together, and Mr. Madden has plenty of experience with that. And then my final point is that I looked carefully to see if there were evidence of mature tree stump cuttings. I found only 2 or maybe 3. It was kind of hard to tell. One of them are stumps that were definitely from mature trees. I think only one of them was actually from an alive tree. There also were some significantly sized shrub cuttings that winterberry that were cut that probably had like a decent sized DBH to them, honestly. So it's on Nantucket, the line between shrub and tree is kind of arbitrary because we have these scraggly, salty, windblown trees and shrubs. It's clear that, some significant plant biomass in the large shrub and trees were cut, but it wasn't that much. It was mostly the understory shrubs, smaller stuff. But it is definitely true that a few larger shrubs and a couple of trees were cut. So I think at least including a handful of larger size trees and shrubs to accommodate that would make sense. I have heard the argument many times about, yes, there's transplant shock and there is a ecological benefit for having smaller caliper sizes, and I agree with that. But I think adding some variability in there is probably good too. And having, mostly the smaller sizes, but 1 or 2 bigger, just to create some variety in the physical structure of the site would be good. And I mean, there are still standing Tupelo and maple trees there, but just trying to create as much variability and diversity in that habitat with the restoration is what I would hope for. So thank you. Commissioners, anything else at this point?
Seth, Mike.
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
So and I know, Brian, you mentioned it, but one thing on the notice of intent is that even going down that list, it's native species, like as we had a brief discussion on site and for the benefit of other people here at the meeting, anything coming out of the nurseries that's fertilized and looks luscious, the deer are going to be on. So I don't know what the answer is at this moment, and I'm not saying this to be a pain to the violator, but we should really think about what sort of deer protection can be offered, because it's just going to be painful for everybody going forward if things need to be replaced over time because of deer browse.
Okay, other commissioners?
I'm not one.
All right, so we're in a public meeting, not a public hearing. We're not required to take public comment. If commissioners think they have enough information to approve the enforcement, approve the restoration plan and allow them to proceed with the planting, we can certainly do that. Or if you'd like to hear from members of the public, we can do that as well. Commissioners, what are your thoughts on that? John, go ahead.
I think we should hear from everybody and then decide.
Okay. All right. Yes, whoever is in the town room.
It's Will.
Yes.
I just wanted to jump in too after Mike. I definitely think deer protection is going to be super important here, and I just wanted to point everybody towards another enforcement situation that required large restoration. There are individual deer protection around everything, and it's a pain, but if any spot's going to need it, I think there's going to have to be a lot of deer protection myself, so.
Yes. I think the representatives from the violator are aware of that as well. So I will accept public comment at this time under my discretion. We will first recognize the representatives on behalf of the abutters. So, Mr. Bailey, I'll recognize you at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I actually would like to, and I think Will is going to have to promote him, but I'd like to have Scott Smyers from Oxbow, speak to this more of a technical than legal. I do have a couple of comments on process, but you've covered most of them. So what I'd ask is for Scott to speak, and then if I could go back and just have a couple of items on process, that would be great.
Yes, Will, can you bring Scott over? And then Scott, please introduce yourself for the record with your name, your connection to the project, and then make your comment.
Hey, am I in? Hello?
Hi, Scott, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I actually have a drone image too we took yesterday. I think that might be helpful to get to one of your questions specific to the limit of disturbance. But we can, send that later. We have requested the digital file for the property line from Brian Madden. He said he would request it, but we haven't got that yet. I think that would be very helpful to overlay because we know that the Mass GIS property lines are pretty good, but they're not as good as surveyors. If we don't get it from Mr. Madden or the violator here, we have surveys from our I'm from Oxbow Associates, I should have said that, but we're representing the abutters at number 12 and number 16. And they've requested the survey data from their individual properties too, so we'll get it eventually. But the drone image clearly shows what seems to be a lot more impact to the west of number 14, where the deer fence is now that he said he would take down, but hasn't made any effort to do so far. And I think that's a concern, and it goes back to one of my original recommendations, which is the standard for all conservation commissions. And I know the Nantucket Conservation Commission is familiar with, is the wetland accurate and is the impact area accurate? And I think we're still haven't answered those questions yet. I know you were out there a couple of days ago. I wasn't able to be there, but two of my staff were there who are familiar with wetlands and wildlife, and they were able to, like I said, do the drone footage, look around for vernal pool species. They did find some fairy shrimp to the south of the impact area, but it's probably over 150 feet away where the fairy shrimp were. And there could be more, in the pool to the north as well that they cut right into, but they just haven't come out yet. But we did look around there. found a couple of snapping turtles, a garter snake, but the only fairy shrimp were to the south. I will say, in response to Mr. Wood's letter, I was reading about the impact, and he was disputing the Oxbow claims that the impact was larger. But then when I did the math, and it specifically says 2,858 square feet on adjacent land, but only 1,335 are being planted on number 16. That's their own numbers on the letter. So if you subtract the big one from the small one from the big one, you end up with 1,523 that apparently has either no restoration or doesn't matter. So I don't know where that goes. So I still recommend that the commission focus some more on those, the basics of the making sure we get the impact correct. And I had mentioned before, and I heard the chairman reiterate this, that it was a good idea to add some larger specimens of both trees and shrubs. I think what I recommended was 2 or 3 larger trees, and 25% of the shrubs to be like not huge shrubs, but 3-gallon shrubs. And I think that limiting the access and carrying shrubs through, I don't know if we really need to, the access is not that big of a deal. We're just talking about walking, carrying shrubs and some wheelbarrows, perhaps. I assume most of this is going to be done by hand. You could park along Winnet Road without driving in and having to drive over more stems that, there could be a few plants that survived in there. Why would they want to do more impact? I recommended a standard method, which is adding mats or even just sheets of plywood that you could park on temporarily, and then you drive away and you don't have to restore it. It's just a simplified, low impact, common method. The debris removal, I think that, I don't know, I didn't hear you say, I know you were out there 2 days ago. Did you see any debris that you thought should be removed? I think that's customary for most wetland restoration, is at least grab the plastic and tarps and that sort of debris that the violator couldn't be bothered to pick up. So I think that, as far as this plant, the restoration should be very detailed in the mitigation, in the monitoring requirements. And as I had suggested, I really think that going through the effort now, when the plantings are put in, to just label all the plantings with metal tags, so we know we can find them in the future and there's no confusion, and have a really good, it's not an as-built plan, but I call it an as-planted plan, right? I think that would be really helpful to know where all these are, especially if we're talking about planting on somebody else's property. We really need to get that understood. That's a whole different issue, but it's important. But we need to make sure that that's all approved by the individual landowners. And I think that, the long-term monitoring and the invasive plant control, finally, that's something that I'm very familiar with. I'm a licensed pesticide applicator in Massachusetts. And I think it's going to be really important to do this right in this particular project because of the invasive plants that are already there. And anytime you open it up to more sun, more disturbance, some of those invasive species are just going to really explode and take advantage of those conditions, because that's what they're designed to do. And there's going to be a lot along the edges on the that are existing, and not so much in the area that was mowed down to the ground, but you have to know where those sprouts are to be able to treat them. And you also have to know where the sprouts are coming up to be able to plant. When they're planting, they should be very careful not to plant, obviously, right on top of a good native species that's struggling to come back after it was cut down this winter. So I think that concludes most of my main points. And I'm here for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Scott. I'm not going to permit you to show the drone imagery at the meeting today because it wasn't received in a timely fashion. I also would just warn you to make sure that you have appropriate permission to take that drone imagery. Being a drone pilot myself, you're able to take drone imagery over any property for recreational use, but you need for commercial use, which this would fall into the commercial use bucket, you would need express consent from the property owner to actually collect the imagery of their property. So unless you've received that from the property owner, I would warn you, I'd say not to submit that. But if you have, then we'll certainly take it as a submission for our next hearing. Commissioners, any questions or comments for Mr. Smyers? I'll just note two of Oxbow Associates representatives were not at the site viewing, but they were in the parking lot of the Wawina Gatehouse, and they did allay some of their thoughts and concerns to the commission prior to the site visit. The violator and the violator's representatives have repeatedly not given permission for their Oxbow's representatives to come onto the 14 Plover site, which is within their rights to do. But I do personally believe, and it's, I can't compel anything, but I do personally believe that it might make it easier for everybody if that was permitted. But again, we're not required to allow anybody onto the site other than commissioners, commission staff, and representatives of the violator. So at this point, I'll go back to Mr. Bailey. Dan, you're still on mute.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. Scott covered a lot of what we had wanted to cover. I want to respond a little bit to Glenn's comment. Yes, we are trying to work cooperatively. Oxbow and LEC have had discussions. Again, as Scott said, we'd like to see some larger trees. One of the trees that was cut right on the Delaney property line was 35 to 40 feet. Obviously, we can't replace that, but if we get some mass in there, that would start to grow pretty quickly. We understand the balance of large trees and small trees, but that would be in particular a good place to put it. Cooperation, however, is a two-way street. We've heard, and it's particularly galling to my clients, that the deer fence is still up. The lights that are plainly violative are still up. The debris that was cut is still there. In other words, since the date of the enforcement order, the violator has made no effort whatsoever to address obvious problems. And we really doubt his spirit of cooperation. And we encourage or his actual cooperation. We encourage the commission through a notice of intent to make sure that there's a good followable, monitorable restoration plan, invasive species plan. And I'm glad to hear that you intend to follow up with that in short order. We still ask the same question that the commission has asked, which is, well, who did this work? What landscaper was it that went out there and did that? We haven't had an answer to that yet. My clients are, while they're willing to cooperate, and that one of the things that would require would be access to their properties. They're going to want a licensed on-island contractor to do any work there. And I also just want to touch, the amended order of conditions for the pool and the landscaping. The commission has authority to revoke orders of conditions for non-compliance or in the event of new information. Here, there couldn't be a more blatant violation of that order of conditions. It completely went beyond the limits of work in that order, an existing open order. One of the ways to address that, and I hear commission members being frustrated, with not being able perhaps to find, not being able to do this, not being able to do that. Well, you could revoke, the existing order for non-compliance. There are also new conditions now. All the wetlands are gone. Is that, or at least all the wetland plants are gone, is that going to affect the work that was proposed to be done under that order? Do you need new conditions to that effect? So, look, we fully support the commission and the violator going forward and getting this restoration work done as quickly as possible. But that is not, in our view, sufficient to address all the problems out here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey. Questions or comments from commissioners?
Seth?
Yes, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just on plant sizing, since I was one of the people that spoke to it and you had comments and Mr. Smyers had comments, you certainly can bring some sizable plants in on carts, ball carts with some muscle. So I'm fully in support of some sizable plants to satisfy everybody. Just my concern was bringing in pieces of machinery into the wetland area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I mean, I think I said this before, but we know that in nature, the more biodiverse systems are the ones that are most ecologically resilient. So, having just variability in species and size is going to be helpful. And I know the applicant has modified their plan to change the sizes a bit. I would just say that my request is that we just have a gradient of sizes, and that some sizes make sense in different areas because of the exposure or the elevation or the whatever conditions on site. But, I think they can do that effectively, and that also when we take the notice of intent and we see above survivability, then we can have updates to this as needed. I would also say there is quite a lot of debris on site. I'm not sure how long some of that debris has been there, but some of it has been there for decades. I mean, we found a Clorox bleach in a glass jug. Can't even tell you when the last time bleach was made in glass jugs, but it wasn't in this century. I would think as a routine, I mean, there's plastic and trash, and there was a sink, the metal sink. And then there is a lot of like logs and natural debris too. And I know the applicant is requesting to spread that natural deadfall and logs around the site, which I think is fine. But I think we should certainly require them to pick up any trash that's at least easy to access, because that seems like a completely sensible thing to do, especially when the ground is open to it now. Who has their hand raised in the room?
It is I.
Go ahead.
Will. First of all, that Clorox bottle was not trash. It's worth $20. I looked it up. Kept it. Second, I just wanted to say, unless I'm remembering this wrong, but I think in the updated plan there was a range of 1.5 to 3 inch caliper trees. And I wanted to just jump in and say, from some tree planting experience, a 3 inch caliper, it's a 3 inch line straight through the tree. And if that is a ball and burlap, it usually takes like 4 guys in a ball cart. It's a 12 to 16 foot tall tree. Am I making that up, Mike? Mike's a pro. But I just wanted to say that's a pretty sizable tree, and that's getting to the point that's not too big yet, is what I'm trying to say. So other times that you've heard Will chime in about studies on tree planting and whatnot, I'm talking about the real instant gratification, like let's bring a tree spade in with a bobcat. That tree will not do well and may not ever look good. But the larger 3-4 inch sort of stuff can be pretty instant. Pop them in, have some larger trees. So I just wanted to throw that in for everybody because it might be an option to kind of suggest a certain percentage of the higher end of the range. But I'll just keep beating the dead horse that I just want everyone to be careful of anything that's ridiculously large.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Do any other members of the public wish to weigh in at this time? I see Burton Balkine. Let's bring him over. Please introduce yourself for the record if you have a connection to the project or not, and say your piece.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know if what I'm going to say next is in your purview, and you can certainly stop me at any point. But I know the Walwinnett bike path is going to be planned, I believe, for that side of the road. I don't know how far it's going into this property. I know that the scar goes all the way to the road or the clearing. So I just was wondering if there's any consideration, or it's in your purview to take the future bike path into consideration and any remediation plan for the site. Thank you.
It's not really in our purview. I mean, we are aware. I served on the NPNEDC when it was being permitted, and Mike is on there now. We are aware of it, but we deal with conditions how they exist today, not rather than what future conditions might be. Any other members of the public? Okay. Seeing not, commissioners, we have a few things to do before us today. If we are comfortable with the restoration plan that has been submitted and amended, we need to amend the enforcement order to consent to that plan and allow them to begin work on that plan. And then also we need to set a timeline for requiring a notice of intent. So any commissioners have major concerns or not feel comfortable moving forward with the restoration plan?
No.
I'm okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to amend the enforcement order to allow the violator to move forward with the restoration plan as submitted?
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a
Second.
Thank you, RJ. By roll call vote, Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Mizzarelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Ingborg, aye. That carries unanimously. We'll get that amended and sent out. And the second item we need to do, or at least the second item we need to do, is to require the submission of a notice of intent by either by a specific calendar date or within a specific amount of days. Thoughts on this, commissioners?
30 days?
Yeah.
30 days is fine by me. That's pretty standard.
Seems like they have most of the stuff already anyway, so.
Is there a motion to require the violator to submit a notice of intent within 30 days?
So
I'll
moved.
move. I'll second that.
Okay, RJ, thank you for the motion, and Linda for the second. By roll call vote. Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Mizzarelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Eggenberg, aye. That carries unanimously. We'll count those days for us, and he'll get us the actual date that it needs to be submitted by, and he'll send it out to the representatives. And I believe personally that's all we need to do tonight, because we will be continuing this discussion with town council about potential fines, and we'll be following up as we receive the notice of intent. But if commissioners feel like anything else needs to be done tonight that we've missed, please let me know at this point. Okay. Thank you all for your participation, and we will see you again at least at the April 8th meeting, and then when
What about staff comment?
Yeah, we're going there.
Oh,
At least
okay,
at the
let's
April
do it.
8th meeting, and then when the notice of intent is submitted. So that moves us on from enforcement actions to staff reports. Will do have a report.
I got really nervous, Seth. I'm sorry, I didn't want to be skipped. I just wanted to say very quickly, not even that this is the most serious comment, but I thought it was a great time to have all 7 commissioners at a site visit yesterday, and I would love to see that again. That's all I'm saying.
You're not going to get it from me on a Tuesday because of HCC, except that my hearing was about an hour and a half in past 4.
I'll FaceTime you. But I just want to say I think it was really helpful for real that everybody came yesterday. And that's it. I love it when you guys come to site visits.
Thank you, Will. So we've reached the end of our agenda. The last thing we need is a motion to adjourn. Is there a
So
motion?
moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Linda,
Second.
for a second. Thank you, Mike. By roll call vote, Tim Brain,
Aye.
Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
RJ Turcott,
Aye.
Joe Klandowski,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Linda Williams,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you all for a good meeting tonight.
Thank you, Seth.
This
Thank
meeting
you.
is adjourned.
Thank you on mic. Not you, microphone.